Key in the Dark, Episode 3. I'd like to talk about accelerationism. But before that, let's lay some ground rules, some foundation. I'm laying something out here. A larger idea I have that I will return to later is this idea of adapting that which is big in the real world, we might say, to what is small, to a single person. An alternative is a society compared to a single person and the connections that you can draw there. There's not a lot, but I think there's more than most people think. I'll upload the video about the Mindscape. That was the only one that made a real video, and that was with my artist's illustrations, and it was pretty good. So anyway, these larger ideas, somewhere lower, if you're into physics, you know, the way planets orbit a sun is kind of like how electrons orbit a nucleus in an atom, and then there's also quantum stuff, and it's like these rules, at their most basic, can be found at multiple levels. There's also a hermetic idea. I think I've got that right. As above, so below. And that kind of you can imagine like floors in a building above, below, that sort of preposition, but that's not what I'm thinking. I'm thinking as above, as below, as zoomed out, as within. That might make more sense. So larger things being analogous for smaller things. I like the analogies of it. So thanks for playing along with the foundation. Now the actual idea. Accelerationism, this is a somewhat controversial idea, but it's just an idea. I'm just talking about ideas here. I'm not asking you to do anything, and I'm not doing anything myself. Ideas, words, actions. I don't think there's anything wrong with this, but accelerationism, my limited understanding, comes from Ted Kaczynski. He famously bombed some places, and I'm pretty sure he's still in jail. I think they moved him to a medical thing recently, so he might die. But he wrote a book, a manifesto, in fact, Industrial Society and Its Consequences. If you've heard the phrase, the Industrial Revolution and its consequences have been a disaster for the human race, that came from him. I read it. I read the whole manifesto. I got a copy of it. It was a great example of understanding an idea without agreeing. I highly suggest everyone do this if they have time, if you can bother yourself to read. Understanding an idea without agreeing with it, because I do not agree that bombing tech companies was the right thing to do for the environment. And yet I read his whole manifesto and I can explain his ideas, which I will not be doing here. What I will be doing here is focusing on a specific one. This is accelerationism, and this is not just a TED idea. This is something that can be applied in a lot of cases. The philosophy of accelerationism being basically that the world is irreparable. We can't fix it. We will only tear ourselves apart with technology that's interpersonal. We will live poorly. Between countries, we will live poorly. It's a very pessimistic idea, but the idea is the only thing we can do is rebuild from the ashes. Thus, in order to prevent pain, as a world, we should accelerate towards this demise. That's what he was doing with these tech companies, because he viewed tech companies as at odds with nature. I might be butchering the ideas, don't quote me if you're writing an essay on Ted Kaczynski. But basically, by doing more and more chaotic things, we will bring the world to its inevitable end sooner. And remember, the word is inevitable. If you're really zooming out over the course of generations, you can understand how someone might consider this compassionate. Because if you know something's going to happen, better not to drag it out. Like, would you want to be sick and ailing for a year, knowing you're going to die, or would you rather just die right away? There might be different answers to that, and I'm not claiming that there is any true answer. Again, I'm not agreeing with what Ted Kaczynski had to say, but I am saying that I understand it, and I think it serves a purpose. If you remember the as above, so below, as without, so within, I like to think of personal things in life using accelerationism. Nothing so dark as Armageddon or the end of the world, but personal accelerationism for small things. I've got a really good example. I think it tells the whole story. There was a cute girl at the gym I go to, and I thought, I should ask her for her number. There's nothing really to lose. And of course, there was nothing to lose, because the worst she could say is no, and yet I found myself, I couldn't bring myself to do it. It's like that previous thing I talked about, the smallest possible step, and that's what it is. I didn't want to imagine a life with her. Step one's just getting her number. And yet I had a hard time even with step one, but what I found possible is doing a little bit of mental accelerationism. In my own little world, my own little mindscape, the idea was, there is no alternative to asking her for her number. It is inevitable. So are you going to sit here and waver and think about it and get all sweaty, nervous sweaty, not just gym sweaty, nervous sweaty? Or are you just going to do it? And once I had myself convinced that it was inevitable, it had to happen, what other motivation would I have than to do it right away? Why would I not want to end the pain sooner and just make it happen? And adjacent to this idea of Armageddon, the end of industrial society, this one's a lot more benign, because it's like there's a possible good ending where she would give me her number. Now, of course, I talked to her. Turns out she already has a boyfriend. No big deal. Whatever. We learned, and I was able to end that anxiety sooner than I would have otherwise. That's why I think this is an applicable idea to your own life. Consider it. Accelerationism, as without, so within. We'll touch more on these ideas in the future.